Okay, a few more people just joining. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our third virtual meeting via Zoom. I'd just like to mention a few rules that will help the meeting run smoothly. And I'm also letting people in at the same time, multitasking here. So as the screen was saying earlier on, please turn off your microphones and video cameras during the talk so that there will not be any visual or audio distractions. If you would like to ask any questions of our speaker, please write these using the chat function located at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen if you're using an iPad. The icon for this will appear when you hover your mouse within the program window. I will put the questions received to the speaker on your behalf at the end of the talk. Just letting a couple more people in. So I will introduce our speaker, and tonight it is Donna Martin. Donna is a resident of Soham and has been chair of the Soham Museum since its foundation in 1998. She is a project leader of Archaeology Cambridgeshire East, ACE for short, which was created as part of an HLF jigsaw project which sought to establish active local archaeology groups across Cambridgeshire and give them the professional mentoring and training necessary to carry out archaeological investigations and, in the process, inform the Historic Environment Record, HER, of unrecorded and under-recorded archaeological sites across the county. She is also a contributing author to Treasure Hunting, a magazine dedicated to responsible metal detecting, not unresponsible stuff. Donna was awarded a BA Honours History from the Open University and also holds an advanced diploma in local history from Oxford University. During her studies, Donna was invited to work on the initial stages of the Blick Mead project, about which we know from our previous lectures from David Jakes. I first met her when she joined the designation department of my former employer, English Heritage, now Historic England, in 2008. Tonight, she's going to talk to us about a site we have already heard about from Bill Franklin from his talk in January, but Donna will be looking at it from a very different aspect. Oh dear, that's interesting. After the sad death of our former chairman, the distinguished scholar Anne Hodden Turnbull in 2015, a memorial fund was set up from contributions by her family members and others, including those from this society, to make financial contributions to students of archaeology studying within Ely and the surrounding district towards the cost of studying and undertaking archaeological investigations within the United Kingdom. In 2019, Archaeology Cambridgeshire East were awarded a bursary from the fund, and tonight Donna will inform us about how young archaeologists and the AHK bursary helped to reveal Roman Bedwell Hay. So I'll ask Donna to share her screen with us, and off we go, I hope.
I will, just bear with me a moment. There we go. Right, so thank you very much, Steve, for the introduction. I hope you can hear me.
Hang on a moment, I think we might still have my screen up there. Just a second.
I can't see you. I can see me.
Just a second, I must stop sharing my screen. Which I can hopefully do. Oh, sorry, bit of a glitch here, my fault.
Are we there?
Okay, try sharing your screen now, Donna.
I should be sharing it. Can you see it? No, hold on. Go back to you. Hopefully. There you go. Let's do it again. Share screen.
Ah,
There.
this looks promising.
Are
Yes.
we there?
Yep, we're there. Thank you.
I've got vision here now. I wonder what's going on. I think it might have been partly me as well. Right, good evening, everybody. Sorry to hold you up. I hope you can all see me and hear me. Thank you very much, Steve, for your lovely introduction. Steve talked a little bit about the Jigsaw Group, but we were actually set up as a county-wide project, or one of them. We actually tried to set up in Ely, and then due to costs moved across to Soham. And because the group was actually quite small, ACE actually became a subgroup of Soham Museum. So we don't really have our own funds, as it were. But what we do get from the Jigsaw project is professional training and access to kit. However, as I'll go on to explain, there is an issue, a small issue with regard to access to kit. So the remit of Archaeology Cambridgeshire East is to focus on the archaeological setting of the East Fen Edge. As Steve explained, any questions, please, to him about the Bedwell Hay project, about me, about ACE, absolutely fine. I don't mind answering questions on anything. Bedwell Hay, although it's not quite on the East Fen Edge that we look at, sort of the west of the ooze, if you like, it actually has connections with the East Fen, and I think that's why Bill sort of came across it to start with, although John Parish did actually approach us initially. One thing I will say is that there has been an issue acquiring images from the school. So I asked 4 times and nothing was forthcoming. This is possibly due to the subject of data protection and permissions of sharing child images on a screen with other people that they don't know. So you'll have to put up with the images that we have, but hopefully this will be informative and as well entertaining. And I just want to give you a flavour of what we did. So you just need to imagine then that each activity was busy with 30 new and very excited children every day. So we applied and were successful in receiving the Anne Halton Cranball Bursary Award for £500 from EDAS to fund this and further ACE-led educational projects in the local area. The grant was made on the 10th of February 2019, and planning had already started for the dig at Bedwell Hay. ACE was already doing a fair bit of field work there at the time. In the end, actually, we had a slight shortfall, which it was only about £35, but the museum actually met that. But ACE would like to thank EDAS and obviously Dr. W. Halton Cranball for their support in actually just underpinning ACE in terms of the work that we do within the community, but allowing us to invite children in to participate in this kind of experience. So you'll see by the list that the items we purchased were pretty basic, but they allow us to be flexible and to undertake this kind of educational or community commitment. And you probably know now, things have changed in schools. Schools work to tightly structured timetables that do not allow for much flexibility. It's very hard for them to schedule projects in such as this. The standard jigsaw kit that we have access to has to be ordered in advance, but it may not be available at the same time as we need it. So this grant actually helped us to achieve our aims and able to engage our local communities with their heritage at times that are suitable and convenient with them. So this is just a small graph, just showing you how the grant was spent. And the majority of the grant was actually spent on equipment that would have another life after the project. like sieves, fine trays, washing up bowls, buckets, and tarpaulins, all very exciting. And most of the items we bought are reusable, including safety equipment such as high-vis jackets. Consumable items such as disposable gloves are essential when working in the community. We have to buy these in for every new project, but just meeting some of that cost is a real help for us because, like I say, we have no funding of our own, so to speak. And it's the same with recording items such as fine bags, marker pens, but these are low cost items and normally we tend to buy these out of our own pocket. They can be fairly easily funded as well. So the science equipment was really a luxury spend for us, things like magnifying glasses and bug hunters and all kinds of things like that. That's what they're labelled as. I don't know if you know what one of those is, but just imagine sort of almost a triangular shaped cone with a lens at one end of it, and you put that over your macro finds and magnify them up to massive proportions. And these science kind of items are very important to have as part of any curriculum-based learning environment when we're working with children. And obviously children are fascinated with the tiny little things that they can find in the dirt. So planning and preparation. The ACE project designed for educational surveys, this is junior participants, is our standard handout for all school projects. This can be easily adapted for community projects. It basically forms part of our information pack, and we find it really useful in laying the ground rules because every time you're setting up a new dig, you're working with individuals. So it gives an introduction to ACE and what we do. It provides all the information any organisation intending to participate in a joint project might require. We've got sample statements and photo references of previous projects included in it, what the school is required to provide in terms of risk assessments, data protection, health and safety and first aid, protective equipment and necessary items for participants to bring, from Wellingtons and waterproofs to hats, sun cream, drinks and snacks. And in this case, actually, April 2019, hats and sun cream were essential. A statement about potential site conditions, so reminding people that fields are muddy. And it also states what the landowner will provide. So the landowner also gets a copy of that if it's relevant. It states what ACE will provide in terms of educational support, equipment, consumables, protective clothing, etc. And our processes, how many participants to what we call a station or particular learning environment set up, and how the workflow will be managed, i.e. test pit, excavation, sieving, fines, processing and washing, flotation and macro fines. And we can cater for about 34 students maximum with 4 supervisors at any one time. It talks about photography for our records, how ACE works and our standards, and gives examples of recording sheets. We also have a learning pack with a fines handling kit and information, which is really important. And the last thing that's in the pack is the health and safety protocols, our child safety policy, valid certifications such as DBS and ID, and our notice of work and public liability insurance. So it's a bit dull, but the admin has to be done. So to the dig itself, the initial meeting we had with the head of Little Thetford School, Johnny Wallace, took place on 27th of February in 2019 in landowner John Parish's kitchen on a very windy day. And I'd like to say we actually took Johnny Wallace out to the site, and the farm is right on top of the hill, and it was blowing a gale and we could hardly stand up. And I reminded both of them that in archaeology we all know that the Romans really loved windy places. We basically stated out our case. We would work with the school if the school wanted to work with us, and John was very happy to give his permission for the dig to take place on the farm. We'd have 30 children over a 4-day week from 9:30 AM till 11:40, and the school would arrange a joint exhibition with ACE for the whole school, teachers, parents and guardians for the Friday. A school visit, and you can see the presentation we gave in the bottom left-hand corner, was arranged for the 31st of May 2019. where we shared, that's ACE, our experience of previous archaeological digs and digs with school. And at the bottom right hand corner, you can see evidence of the Bedwell school dig and the test pit we dug with the children there in 2017. We also familiarised the children with the equipment they would be using, so I brought in sieves and buckets and things like that, and introduced them to our handling pack, which we'll go on to talk about shortly. John Lesson actually brought along quite a bit of his own personal collection from the farm, including items that he had found, varying from sort of dinosaur bones to Roman brooches, to share with and inspire the children. So the handling pack we left with the school. Now, ACE has got various different handling kits. We've got handling kits that we take out to outdoor exhibitions, and we have handling kits that we leave with schools. This handling kit actually does contain Roman coins. So we have a pot of what was 10 Roman coins, which is now 9 Roman coins. And you do find children can be slightly acquisitive, so things do go missing every now and then, but it's part and parcel of what we do, and so we have to not mind. We give things gladly, and things that we don't mind if they do disappear. We'd rather that the children share the experience of looking at things, real things, that is, touching things and feeling things and learning about things. So the kit contains everything from bone, glass, and that's proper glass with sharp edges, flint, pottery from Iron Age through to medieval red wares, Roman grey wares, and blue and white willow pattern, various different bits of rusty nails. We've got a big ballast stone in there, and clay pipe, just things that you would find really as well when you dig in your garden. So most kids can dig a hole in their garden and find a piece of clay pipe, and so it's really important to share with the children that this is part of their history. A piece of clay pipe in your garden is part of your heritage. The handling pack includes very detailed teacher notes that actually allow teachers to look up extra information if they require to, and we're always on hand if they need to email us and ask us questions. We're also always happy to go in the school and do workshops. What was interesting about this experience was that we thought we were workshopping on the morning with one class, and we ended up going around the whole school, which was slightly unexpected, and our 30 children over a 4-day week had suddenly turned into a very exciting 120 children. So, introduction then to the location and historic landscape at Bedwell Hay Farm. You've learned an awful lot about this from Bill Franklin, so I'm just orientating you. So you have Ely to the north. You'll see the picture in the left-hand corner is actually to the south, looking down across Brunty Fen. It's a bit deceiving, really. If you actually look at this piece of the map on the OS with contour lines, you can see there's quite tight contours here. It's quite a steep drop-off. So there's been a long history of archaeological finds on the farm, from fossils and dinosaur bones to Neolithic and Bronze Age tools, Iron Age to medieval history, but that's not unusual for the area. What's interesting about the farm at Bedwell Hay is how many archaeological features there are in the landscape. The location is on a hillside. It overlooks the A10 and the old Aikman Street to the east, the A140 Richford Road, and the ever-growing Lancaster Road Business Park to the west, where actually, while we were working there with the children, they'd come across some Iron Age remains, including a burial. Also to the west is the old RF Witchford site, which actually does creep along the farm really up onto the hill. But to the west is the site of a Saxon cemetery, and then, as I said, Brunty Fen to the south. And the north of the farm is sort of perched on top of the hill, and once you get up, there's quite nice views of Ely to the north. So this is the 1886 Ordnance Survey map of the farm. It shows the old layout, and you can see it labelled as Bedwell Hay, Hay farm. And it's the old layout of the farmstead and the fields to the left of the farm that Ace had initially scoped by field walking. As Bill explained in his talk, resistivity survey results were productive. But MAG undertaken in 2018 for ACE by archaeological research picked up various archaeological features, including to what appeared to be ditch enclosures, which required some further investigation. When we met with Johnny Wallace at the farm, we had put all the dates in the calendar, and the dig was scheduled for the 17th to the 21st of June 2019. This was actually preceded by a week-long ACE dig in the set-aside boundary that produced evidence of Roman activity in the vicinity. That actually was confirmed by field surface finds and field walking, and I believe actually Edith had actually been out and done some field walking slightly higher up from the farm and come to the same conclusions. The trench, the first trench put in, was finished but left open as an additional learning environment for the children who would participate in, which, given that we just found out we had 120 children aged from 4 to 10, it's quite useful to have that extra thing to look at. So this is the aerial view of the farm, and believe me, Farmer Parish had thought about everything. From the very beginning, John was very keen to get the local school children involved and started to plan how we might work together to achieve this. We had adequate facilities on the farm, and with my educational background and ACE's previous experience of working with children from the Weatheralls and so on, we were able to plan a week-long dig. John was able to get funding for the transport after a bit of an effort, and we were actually asked if whether or not we'd like to apply for the AHK bursary, which we did. So the flow of activities, you can just see, actually I can move my cursor if I can find it. Just here, where my cursor is a little courtyard. The children were actually delivered to the courtyard and congregated there just in front of what was the fines washing and science facility, which was undercover in this here barn. And they were actually given a talk, an orientating, can't say the word, orientating talk before we started. We had hand washing and toilet facilities here. The children were permitted to all their snacks and coats and things in the education room, where John Parish had laid out the most extraordinary exhibition with dinosaur bones and fossils and flints and all kinds of interesting bits and bobs that we actually gathered children together every single day and had a talk about the finds in the exhibition in the education room. And then it was a short walk out, it was a short walk out just into the field here, and we were in test pit 2, which was just about here in the set aside. And test pit 1 had been dug quite close to test pit 2, actually, just a little bit further down. Our test pits were placed in an area of low activity close to the farm, but near to where the highest density of surface finds was coming off. John had literally thought of everything, and we can't thank him enough for that. He was a superb host. So this is the science bit. This is where the children gathered every day when they got off the bus. You can see set out here, we've got fines washing and flotation activities inside the open barn. So we'd even brought cover if the weather wasn't great. There's adequate room for the 8 children that would be using the facility at any one time. So 4 on the fines washing and 4 on the flotation and macro fines. Each orientation session began with an instructive talk about the archaeology, the expected behaviours, which is quite important when you're dealing with children, just to kind of lay the parameters out before we start. Health and safety, no running, etc. And a description of how each activity was important to our understanding, that's our collective understanding. including their understanding of the archaeology and how the children would be contributing as actual archaeologists, and they were expected to behave as archaeologists. So here's Ace. Once the children got into the field where the main focus of activities were, there was an awful lot of excitement. You can see the sifting area set out on the tarpaulin just behind my head. Very neat and tidy, actually. John had managed to get a job lot of school chairs from somewhere, which keeps stored in his barn, which came in very handy indeed. And we set out a tarpaulin so it's much more easy to replace the soil. I'm very grateful to Graham Barrett on the right, who volunteered to dig with the children on every session, and he hadn't done it before, and he was absolutely amazingly enthusiastic and fantastic and brilliant. I can't say any more because we couldn't have done it without him. So this is the test pit recorded by Ace in context of the Farmer's Test Pit 2. I'd like you to spot the deliberate mistake on some of the slides if you'd like, and I'll explain it to you later. But that had been measured in and GPS recorded prior to the start of the dig. Here we see the surface being scraped back and prepared by our volunteers. It's important to say that the 1 metre square test pit was dug and recorded in exactly the same way as any other community test pit. So it doesn't matter if it's children or adults to do it in the same way, and that's in 10 centimetre spits. Each layer was scraped back, the soil was bucketed and sifted in separate layers, and finds were recorded within the context of each particular layer. Meeting the children was fun. What was fun was that, in contrast to the previous week's Ace Dig, where it had more or less poured down with rain all week, we had spectacular weather. You can see it doesn't look so sunshiny there, but it was spectacular. Day one, this is day one. It comprised youngest children, nursery children aged 4, which was challenging, but they responded very well, and despite their young age, they were fascinated by the activities we provided. It became obvious to us from the start that the teachers and volunteer, guardian and helper parents were extremely enthusiastic at the opportunity, not only to escape from the classroom, but to engage with local archaeology and heritage. And please note now that despite the dryness of the following images, which demonstrate our week of archaeology, the site was actually buzzing with excitement, noise, lots of noise, and activity, lots of activity. So test pit 1, we've got 101 and 102. We're still quite shallow at this point, so the surface has been removed. That's the grassy bit of the turf, as we call it. And then very kindly, as you saw, Chris and Robert actually just scraping level the first surface so it was ready for the children. You can see that somebody's been stomping about in there and then making it nice and flat. Surface finds basically in these 2 spits, mixed with fragments, many small means less than 1 inch shards of pottery, mainly Roman greyware and tile, and fragments of bone, and I think we found a couple of iron nails in this as well. Test bit 2, 103, similar range of materials to the previous layers. In reality, the surface having been removed, this is probably nearing the bottom of the plough depth. So everything in these first layers was really chopped up, really small, really abraded. Not disappointing, it's sort of what you would expect in the plough soil. You know, if you're lucky, you get a really decent pottery shard, but in this case, we weren't. These are some of the macro finds. Now, I think I'm saying this at this point because they're in the plough soil. But what was interesting was, in contrast to other locations that we've actually taken flotation samples from, the macro finds here were scarce to non-existent. This may reflect intensive farming methods of previous decades, but I would like to say that Farmer John Parrish is actively reversing this process by rewilding areas and planting wide borders of flowers. And as volunteers wearing high-vis jackets, we can safely say that there was plenty of insect life about. In fact, we were covered in tiny little black beetles. So test pits, layers 4 and 5. The finds from layer 4 appear to be missing, or they might simply have been put together with finds from layer 5. So I had to rely on the test pit recording sheet records. But you can see you've actually got a layer of activity. If I just give you my cursor here, you've got a layer of clear activity. And remember, these photographs are taken once you get to the bottom of the layer. In this layer, there's mainly pottery, bone, and metal, which I presume are nails. That's all that's recorded on the sheet. And although a Roman hobnail was found in this context, it seemed to have gone missing by the end of the dig. Never mind. At this point, there was a clear change in the soil to a much lighter compound that was darker in colour and contained fewer inclusions than previously, which was quite odd. So it was almost like there was a gap between the surface kind of broken up, chopped up archaeology and what was to come. Layer 5 produced 2 large sherds of greyware, a piece of mortaria, and small fragments of Roman pottery, tile, and bone. And 105, there we go, that's the error that I was going to talk about that was corrected so clearly, says the test pit 02105. This image illustrates how professionally children worked under the guidance of Graham. It shows how professionally really Graham worked with the children. The trench is really well marked out, it's well labelled, and you can see there are nice even gaps between the layers, and it's actually measured out with appropriate fines from the layer as well. So it gives you an idea of how we were working and how we expected children to work with us. Layer 106 was divided into sections A and B to allow as many children as possible to dig. We had this problem with too many children, basically. So when you have 30 children, they all get to have at least one long go each, and that's over a period of 4 days. When you have 120 children, that's a lot of children to get in and even have, you know, a slice of the action. So we divided section 6, which looked like it had some, and you can just see it coming through in the corner there. I've actually put an inset slide in there because it was at the other side of the trench. But we divided it into 2 sections, A and B, to allow as many children as possible to dig, because large finds started to come out and it was much more interesting for them. And this was where we had got up to by the Wednesday morning. The children participating were 2-year groups, aged 7 and 8, and were thoroughly enjoying finding bigger and more impressive shells of pottery. Our volunteer sifting supervisor helped the children sifting to identify their finds, engaging with the general atmosphere of excitement. In layer 5 and layer A, which is the first 5 centimetres, there were 6 sherds of fairly unabraded greyware, including a pot ring, plus many smaller sherds, and a very fine samian ware base. In layer B, which was the next 5 centimetres, there were 2 1-inch pieces of Roman tile and a quantity of small stones, which perhaps were a former loose surface, but not much else. And this is where we collide with Bill's first trench, because 1 to 7 sorry, to 10, that's the end of the pit, had become very sandy. In fact, it was just sand. And that was identified in the previous week's test pit at around the same depth. The finds were sparse, but layer 7 included pottery and bone fragments, a greyware pot base, a sherd of Neem Valley coloured ware with impressed decoration, and surprisingly, a very fine Bronze Age flint blade. Similarly, layer 8 included a worked flint. Between layers 8 and 10, however, was only pure sand, as discovered in test pit 1. And I was told a theory about that by an old boy from Soham, who had been working on the Soham bypass. where they'd found lots and lots of Iron Age brooches beneath the sand. And he wondered whether anyone had come up with the theory before, but he reckoned there must have been a tsunami to cover everything with this massive layer of sand. So thoughts on that by email would be appreciated. So having reached the sand layer with a whole day to go, and the oldest group of children, the children that are more challenging, I would say, because they're aged 9 to 10 and they really are going to engage with this kind of activity, it wasn't ideal. I actually called in with Bill and asked if he was sure test pit 1 was finished, as we had a lot of very energetic children to occupy, and it was finished. So thankfully, on Thursday we had an extra volunteer, which freed me up to work with the children in the field. And you can see here, this is how the test pit was finished. But it'd been dug in pouring rain, and it was perhaps at the time possible to make out subtle changes in colour in the soil. It was evident as the soil was drying out that test pit 1, the context 104, was some kind of feature in itself. So this is the context here, I believe. You can see you've got a much lighter soil here where my cursor is, and it's just going down here and a little bit jaggedy, but you can see the infill here is much darker, and this actually falls away and carries on going down, 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 down. I could see here large stones poking out of the bottom of the trench. So in order to occupy as many children as possible, we hopped in the trench and started by scraping back. And there we are. So it was large enough for me plus 4 children. I had one working on the Pingo context, which Bill explained to you at his last talk, and that's context 102. One working with me in the ditch at 104, where there's been some Roman finds, and others scraping back looking for inclusions across the larger 2 contexts. And I can say that day was pretty manic, but we were able to work in the trench in a fairly orderly fashion. I allowed the children with me to carefully scrape back, and as they did so, more large finds were revealed, including Roman building material and a huge bone, possibly cattle that we left in situ. We just couldn't get it out, and you can see it here. It was absolutely massive. It looked like this was an open ditch or a pit at one time, or potentially used as a midden. Both test pits, it's important to say that, were measured out and left open for inspection at the end of the dig. For John Parrish, who had undergone a mine operation during the week and so wasn't able to join us, and for other ACE members who hadn't joined in with the school dig to view. So, one of the highlights of the dig had been a visit on Wednesday, the 19th of June, by Sue Marchant. For those of you who don't know who she is, she's a roving reporter from BBC Radio Cambridgeshire, and she recorded a long interview with ACE volunteers and the teachers and children for her daily afternoon show. And as I explained, the dig was extremely hectic on the Wednesday due to the arrival of the head, who seems to be randomly marshalling children around the site. We volunteers maintained as much of an air of calm and dignity as we could under the circumstances. But it was during my interview about the dig with Sue Marchant that possibly our best finds came out. There in layer 6A was the most superb base sherd from the same red pot, which had just come to light, and it was waved in my face, and of course I went into raptures about it, which apparently added something quite marvellous to the interview. We couldn't contain it. The children who were interviewed were equally as excited. The following slides illustrate some of the best times from test bit 2 over the week. So we'll start with the pieces, Sammy and Ware, and you can see it's quite a large piece, quite unabraded, and sadly it has just missed the base stamp. I'm sure I can imagine a slight impression just around here. But imagine being on the radio and just getting presented. That was quite exciting. And just remember, these are children who found this. This isn't us. Children have actually found this and looked after this and got it out in one piece. we've got a couple of large sherds of Roman greyware and a nice big piece of Roman tile. The tile, the sort of red sandwich in black filling, you will all know is very common locally as Roman building fabric. So it'll be fiberglass tile, roof tile, whatever, but we find it all across Roman sites because this is quite a big shed. But obviously as well, two nice big sheds of greyware, which are sharpish, but they've clearly been rolling around for a bit. But these are sherds of greyware from Context 106, which is slightly lower down. And you can see that these are quite fresh and crisp and actually bigger, and a very nice rim sherd there, and then a small piece of base sherd. This is the Bronze Age flint blade I was talking about. And it's a reasonable slice. You can just see where the flakes have been taken off. This came out of 107, so we were very sandy silts at this point. And this is me holding it up to the light, showing how fine the translucent blade is, and the notches napped in to create a serrated edge. So that's a really, really lovely find, and really well spotted as well by the finder. Here we have a 2nd century Romano British piece or sherd of valleyware, or painted colourware as people like to call it. What's unusual about this is the fact that we have some impressed decoration on it, which is rather nice to find. And then we have a large base sherd from Roman greyware storage jar or cooking pot, which again came out of layer 7. And this was our other Bronze Age flint, possibly core. You can see there's a definite few flakes been taken off it. And this is the surface that shows where the flakes have been removed from. But again, a nice find and really well spotted. So we're more than halfway through. What did the children think? This is an expression the children LOVD it. They loved it. We got so many nice comments, but one of the children actually wrote to Farmer and Mrs. Parish to thank them, which is lovely. I hope you all managed to read that. And then this is my favourite thing from the dig. This is a young lady who was one of the Year 9 to 10 pupils called Emily Owers, who had helped me to excavate the dig. And I love how she wrote arch-hateology or arch-hateology, but she was so enthusiastic in helping me to excavate the ditch feature on the Thursday. And she was clearly hugely influenced by her experience. And she made this little booklet, and you can see the spade there. I'm just going to point to that, the spade. And there were lots of little flaps and things in it. And she'd actually recorded what she had learned and all the processes we've been through with the children. And hopefully you've had time to read that. It's pretty good writing, I thought, and fairly legible. And she'd even included a little laminated set of miniature tools and artifacts. I haven't got them all out here, but there's little things like little miniature trowels and things that go in the set, and they live in a little pocket in the booklet. And I was so moved to find that. It must have taken ages and ages and ages to put together, but it's a real testament to the enjoyment that she had from actually just working with us on the site Bedwell Hay. It makes things like this grant worthwhile, this kind of thing. And so we get to Friday. The exhibition was held on Friday morning in the school hall. Each year group joining in separately. The children were able to walk round and look at what had been found over the week and see the washed and well presented results of the dig. You've got to remember they were there for 2 hours each day, but they were being moved around the site, so they didn't see everything all in one go. All of the children participated in the dig, they participated in the sifting, they participated in the fines washing, and they participated in the flotation and the macro fines. So because of that, they weren't all in one place at one time. They didn't get to see everything, although we did show them what had been found on previous days. They hadn't seen it all together. So it's the first time they'd had a really good look at everything all together. ACE volunteers, that's me and Kath Cantrell, we were on hand to talk to them about their experience and answering the questions, of which there were about 1,700,000, as they would say. Parents and carers were very impressed with what had been achieved and the level at which the children had participated. And some of the statements that we had from the parents about the enthusiasm of the children, the way the children came across to us at the exhibition. The teachers enjoyed it, the children enjoyed it. It was just a huge success, and obviously the weather really helped. We displayed each layer with images of appropriate whole artifacts. So you can see here, when we've got a little piece of medieval glazeware, we've put it together with a description and image of a medieval glazeware pot, so that there is some relevance. When we've got a piece of Iron Age pottery, and it's a tiny little fragment, but we've been able to put that together with a picture of some Iron Age pots and a little description. And so the children can see that there is a meaningful context to these very tiny little shards of pottery. So the children could basically relate to the pottery they had found by looking at real items of each period. And I should just say that the quotes on here are quotes from the children themselves that were in their display. So the following, on the right, you'll see with our display, just a small comment or a piece of writing from one of the children here. And we've got amazing, wonderful sieving in this one, but this is context 5, and you can just see at the bottom right here, we've included a picture of the mortarium, and we've got the sherds here in the corner there. And I do believe some was also found when Bill put tested it in test book 1, so may well come from the same item. The language the children use, as I just said, really encapsulate the children's enthusiasm. So the incredible archaeological dig, we did amazing tasks. I mean, the children were really, I suppose, surprised they were allowed to be grown-ups for a day, or even trusted with something that we made to be so important, which of course we know is so important. So again, at the top here with the greyware, we've got a picture of a greyware pot, and down here with the Samian base, we've got a picture of the Samian pot with the same profile, and another one showing how small it would have looked on a large vessel. It's important to note that we hadn't seen any of the responses until Friday. So it was quite moving for us to see what the children had actually written, because obviously we don't know how well we're done. We are so engaged with what we are doing and making sure that everybody is getting the most out of the experience and making sure that it's done properly. We're concentrating, making sure the children are having a good time, but we don't get the feedback until this exhibition right at the end, and that happens on all of our community digs. But here we also exhibited our handling kit at the open event, so that everyone had a last chance to touch and feel everything. So I spoke about the handling collection earlier, and you can see here you've got bone and teeth, you've got some flints, you've got some pieces of charcoal, you've got a ballast stone and a picture of a coracle there, because that's what would have come out at the bottom of the coracle. You've got the Roman coins, actual Roman coins, just set out there, and you can see if you count them, I think, oh, maybe we're down to 8 now, so there were 9. Pieces of clay pipe, pieces of Iron Age pottery, some shell, oyster shell, which is a really common find around here, and we've got some medieval pottery up here, and then I can't see what that is, maybe a little bit of CBM or mixed up pottery there. Point being, any children can come forward and touch any of the finds, and so could their parents, and really that meant a lot to the parents as well, the fact that they could share these things with their children and learn about them, and everything is very concisely They're very well explained. So this is what the children did. Each year group had interpreted their experience using an age-appropriate method in the classroom. And we encouraged them when they were walking around talking to us. I will say the board on the right is where all the expressions come from that you see written up in the presentation. But we encouraged the children to try digging a test pit at home. When they spoke to us at the exhibition and they were really enthusiastic, really is that simple. Find a piece of land. It could be your garden, it could be your grandparents' garden, your friend's garden, an allotment, and try digging a hole and see what comes out and collect what comes out and think about it and look at it. And the children were really proud of what they had done. So at the end of every session, I asked how many of them wanted to become archaeologists. So this is each year group coming around the exhibition. This is the children making age-appropriate experiences or reflections of the experiences in the classroom. It's them looking at their finds and the participation that they had in the actual dig itself. And I asked them how many of them wanted to become archaeologists after each session, and even most of the teachers put their hands up. So we clearly did a decent job. It was a really positive experience for almost everyone. And I say that because only one of our volunteers had a slight reservation about being overwhelmed by quite a lot of loud children. But even the bus driver really enjoyed himself. So, from an archaeological viewpoint, how did our young archaeologists and the AHK grant help to reveal Roman Bedwell Hay? If you ask, was their participation integral to our understanding of the archaeological environment of Bedwell Hay? I would have to say, yes, it was, given what we found. The fine scatter across layers 1 to 4 was clearly disturbed by modern ploughing, but once we'd reached the less disturbed, deeper layers, a working theory that this might be a midden site might be questioned. The layer is too thin and rather suggests this is a scatter and evidence of the demolition of a nearby Roman building. The presence of Samian ware and Neem Valley colour-coated ware would suggest that this was a high status building of some kind, a fact which metal artefacts John holds in his private collection would tend to bear out. The 1886 Ordnance Survey map shows the location of Test Pit 1, which, as you can see, was inadvertently made across an old pond feature. It's possible, given the cut and the depth at which the large midland type finds came out, that this ditch may have been open at a time when the demolition context was spread, or even earlier when the building was in use. So although the trench was left open, I don't think it was fully excavated to the full depth of whatever that feature was, and that's something that could be gone back to in the future. But certainly there were large pieces of Roman tile present at probably about 2.5 foot down, which is quite deep. But that adds something to our understanding, I think, of the landscape. You know, what was here on the map in 1886 could have been a slightly bigger or different shaped feature back in the Roman period. And lastly, Bronze Age flints or worked flints found in the lower context, that's layers 7 and 8, which was otherwise devoid of any inclusion, suggests that there may well have been a settlement nearby. That's a Bronze Age settlement on the hillside overlooking Brantee Fen. In fact, the finds are increasingly documented as an area of highly concentrated, the fens are increasingly documented as an area of highly concentrated, sustainable Bronze Age settlement. So, as I was explaining to people when I'm doing a talk, that if you imagine you are a family in the Bronze Age we don't have a Tesco's to nip to a Sainsbury's or a Waitrose. You need to be nearest to the best possible and most versatile, sustainable food source. Then the Fen Edge is absolutely ideal. You have wildfowl, you have fishing, you have bushes with fruit and berries. You can grow crops on the really rich soil. You can graze animals on the really rich soil, and large animals will come down to the water's edge to drink, so you can actually hunt as well. There's everything you need. It's the modern day Sainsbury's, or the Bronze Age equivalent to Sainsbury's. So we could argue, there wasn't a settlement and that these flakes of flint, or these pieces of flint, they have been washed in with the sand at some point, but that would still mean that there was a Bronze Age settlement somewhere, or Bronze Age activity somewhere in the vicinity of the edge of the fen at Runty Fen and Bedwell Hay Farm. So, in closing, then, for once, I think I'm more or less bang on time, if not slightly early. I hope that I've been able to say something interesting, and that I've provided adequate evidence that the money ACE was granted by the annual Fulton Campbell bursary was well spent, and that the extended school family and children engaged with the archaeology in an appropriate educational environment. But most of all, that I have conveyed what positive experience of that we could Bedwell favours for everyone involved. Thank you, Edith, once again for the opportunity to share our heritage with others. We very much look forward to sharing the legacy of the grant by continuing to use the equipment we were able to purchase within our local communities. And finally, of course, last but not least, we would like to thank all of the children, parents, staff and participants of the Little Thetford School community and Farmer John Parish, because of course without them wouldn't have been able to happen. So thank you very much. That's me.
Thank you, Donna.
I was worried you weren't there.
No,
and I've been talking to myself.
Still here. I will appear any second, I hope.
Are you here?
Yep. Could you stop sharing your screen with us now, please?
I can, yep. A minute. There you go.
Good. Well, that was an interesting alternative view of the dig at Bedwell Hay, and I do have a couple of questions. One from Kevin Evans, who was wanted to know what type of find it was that most impressed the children.
Any type of find, but dinosaur bone. Anything that could conceivably be dinosaur bone was very exciting indeed. I mean, I think they could relate really to the pottery rims and the base, but it's not anything that they're familiar with. So anything that's teeth or bone and you can describe the animal, that's good. And nails, brilliant. Rusty nails, it's a nail, they can identify with that. The older children grasp the idea of broken pot being important, obviously much better than the younger children. The younger children basically absolutely loved the fines washing, playing with the water and the flotation and macro fines. So you do get a spread across the age group of what ticks everybody's boxes. But I will say John's exhibition in the barn was fantastic, and he has got some really impressive finds, which I'm sure you've seen before. Yes. But for the children to be able to talk about them, touch them, feel them in their own time, really, they did have plenty of time. We gave them plenty of time and time to ask questions every day, and we did have just like a wind-up 5-minute chat at the end of the day and questions as well. So really sort of cemented things. But yeah, thanks for that. But yeah, different things for different people, but obviously dinosaur bones is really high on the list.
Right. Okay. Well, I suppose, and things that you can recognize as being something. I mean, yeah. All right. And there's one from Lindsay Frost that says, would the sand floods which affected the site be similar or the same as those which affected Breckland?
All right, well, I've thought a lot about this. Ever since that, what happened was I was actually I was pinching some bricks, and somebody had spotted that I was the lady from the museum. And this farmer came and accosted me, and he was talking about archaeology. He was talking about working with a local detectorist actually off the A142 while they were digging the road. And they were actually they were being badly night hawked. They were actually trying to retrieve as many finds as they could. There was a big Iron Age settlement, maybe it was minor British, but early settlement. And he said that there was so much sand that the actual finds were about 6 feet down underneath this big sand layer. And he said, I've been thinking about it a lot. I wonder if there was a big tsunami. I'm not sure. I wonder whether there was a big washing, or whether or not every now and then we had a flood that brought a lot of sand through from the Breckland. But I don't know if there's been any sampling done. And as far as I know, the theory hasn't really been tested. And one of the things that really, really has worried me about recent archaeology and so on is that they presume the archaeology finishes at the sand layer. And we proved that at the Bedwell dig. We went on through the sand, and it certainly doesn't. And I think stopping at the sand layer and assuming that is that there's kind of the base material is quite well. We know that as archaeologists, but obviously they've been told to stop at that point. But I'd agree, possibly there is something in that it may well have been washed in from the Breckland, but we're probably looking at really extreme weather events.
Okay, thank you. And one from me, it's great that you've got the children so enthusiastic, so young, and perhaps that sparking that interest at a really early age is something that will live with some of them, and they will go on to be archaeologists. Is there any likelihood of further sessions with this school or from other schools?
I mean, we will do whatever. I mean, it's really, really hard work, so you don't go into it lightly. We would like headmasters not to get quite so carried away with themselves. I think at Little Thetford School there'd been some kind of misunderstanding, but there may well have been an element of why can't we all join in? And the headmaster had said, well, of course we can, without telling us. 120 children is a huge amount to manage with a 1 metre test pit. If we knew they were coming, then we'd make more space so that more than half go. I think in the future, we're one of the few groups that does go out and do community archaeology type projects. We do want to set up a big dig project for Soham. We love involving children in what we do, because if we don't breed new archaeologists, archaeology won't be a thing. If we don't have champions for archaeology in the up and coming generations, it won't be a thing. We need to inspire them. I will say that I did in 2017. I did the dig with the Bedwell School, and I still am approached by small people, I call them, but I'm quite small myself, but I'm still approached by young people who say, oh, you Donna, you were on the dig, I dug with you, we did the archaeology with you. I haven't forgotten the experience. So Emily Owens, who did that gorgeous little book, it will stay with her, and she may go, she's bright enough to go on and be a surgeon, she may go and do something completely different. But I hope that she will always have a love of archaeology. And a lot of the kids really wanted to go home and try it for themselves. And I told them to pick up finds in fields and just keep them in a box, wash them up, keep them in a box. So it's really young. I hope this equipment will be well used for years to come, really, and we'll just replace it as it breaks. I mean, it's given us an amazing foundation. We have a real will to go out in the community and work with the community, and we're not scared of children. I'm certainly not scared of children. No.
And have any of them actually gone back and dug up their garden and sort of come to you and said, "What's this, miss?"
I do get the "what's this, miss?" So when I go into school and they know that I'm coming, I quite often do get a stone waved in my face, or it might be something interesting, like a nice fake bug or something like that. But somebody knows. I mean, I'm quite happy to go into a school and talk. We don't charge for educational talks at all. We don't actually charge for local talks at all. We only ask for donation if that's possible. If it's not, then ACE is basically has no money. We are a sub museum, so the funding that we get, anything that we get, basically goes into our pot for kit. And everything we do is for free with volunteers. So it doesn't matter if you go out, once or twice a month and have a talk. But I mean, when we actually take part in the G's open day, and we share archaeology with the people who just come, and about 2,000 people a day I think come through the door at the G's open farm Sunday. And I think we start talking when the first people arrive, and I think there are probably 3 to 4 of us on the stand at any one time with an awful lot of things on display, and we can't even get away for a toilet break. We literally start talking at the beginning of the day and don't stop until people get home. There's such an enthusiasm, especially young people, because it's a really family occasion. There's such enthusiasm for archaeology in young people. I love it when people come to me and wave a find in front of my face, because if you can tell them there's something good, that's brilliant. If you can say, you don't want to say it's a stone, you can say, this is a really interesting looking stone because it looks like this, this and this, or this is a really nice colour, or isn't it shiny? But, go away and find another one like it. Or what you're looking for next time is one that looks like this, and just keep them inspired, never ever put them down, ever.
Okay. Well, I think that's all been very successful, and we're pleased to hear that. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for talking to us this evening to tell us all about what went on. It sounds a very hectic week.
We survived. And I want to thank the ACE team, because those that volunteered were a bit short-staffed. They've had a really hard dig the week before. Those people that volunteered just did the most amazing job, really worked so hard, and it is really hard to keep a lid on your feelings when everything seems like chaos around you. But they did brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly, and it showed as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I must just now give a message to the members. So it's about our next meeting. We do not meet in April, and we were hoping to actually meet at our usual venue in May at the Church Hall. Unfortunately, this cannot happen as the lockdown regulations will prohibit this. So our virtual speaker for our meeting on the 17th of May will be Dr. Marcus Britton. He will be speaking on Mainey Colony, a 19th century utopian experiment. After which we will hold our AGM for 2020 and 2021. We will send you information about the AGM and the speaker nearer the time. So until then, keep safe. Stay well. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
And good night. Oh, somebody's put their hand up.
That says Mona. It's microphone's on. I was giving you a toast.
Thank you. Right. Okay. We're all done. Thanks, Donna.
My
we'll
pleasure.
speak again soon, I hope.
Right,
Yeah, I hope so. Take care.
All right.
well done, Donna.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night.
Sleep well.